Burke and Litwin model. Burke and Litwin model of organization. I'll show you the model as well. But before that, let us try to understand organization, performance, and change. So there, these guys' model was very much focused on trying to understand, or bring more clarity to how change process works in case of an organization, what all systems, subsystems are actually influenced by the change process. So these guys gave this model in the year 1992, right? And that means after Nedler and Tushman, this model was very important and is very useful when you carry out organization development activities, right? Now, what is the beauty of this model? This model helps to predict. It helps to predict the impact of organization change. This is very, very important. If now you just look back at Levin's model, it doesn't appear more vague right now. Though he was very right and he pioneered as a person who tried to explain change process. But now if you look at the model I'm going to discuss now, and think about the one that Levin said. Levin was more, it was very simplified. It was not clear. So if you don't have clarity, prediction is difficult, and how managers, just now I told you something, managers need to make decisions. It's not only HR people who actually need to understand organization change thoroughly, believe me. It's all the people in the organization who are holding managerial positions, who need to take decisions at different course of their work process, need to very well understand this change process. So they need to make decisions. So decision making is somewhat related to how we predict, why people see weather report. People see weather reports so that they try to see what weather is predicting, so that accordingly you can decide, if you are going somewhere, you can decide what things you need to pack. If you are planning some party, you can decide where to take it. So what I mean to tell you is, predicting something actually helps to make a good decision, right? So therefore, this model of Burke and Litwin is more helpful in explaining how one system influences another subsystem in the organization. So it helps in predicting, which actually was absent in all other previous models that we discussed. And second very important, contribution of this model is, it was empirically tested. Now, what is this empirically testing, or it's a causal model. It's a causal model. And again, one more thing I would like to say, my dear students, please develop within you a research acumen, I would like to call it. Research acumen means an interest towards research. It is not necessary that you do PhD and become a faculty, but nowadays, wherever in organizations you join HR, you join marketing, finance, anything you join, you need to, you need to make decisions, and research actually helps you to collect data and predict if you look at, you know, data analysis, or you look at big data analysis, which is so much in now, in HR, in marketing, in health, in tourism, everywhere people are using it. The more you are using digitally, you know, your digital processes in your organization, the more you are using artificial intelligence. All these technological changes are based on predicting, remember. And for predicting, the algorithms that are used mainly are focused on testing empirical relationships. Everywhere one dot moves to the other one, then to the other one, that means it is already predicting some sort of relationship between these variables, 1, variable 2, variable 3, whatever, right? And this, when we test it in a quantitative way, when we test it in a quantitative way, this is called empirically tested. You must have studied in your research methodology also, right? So empirically testing means testing any theory, any function, any process empirically with numbers, that is quantitatively, in terms of quantity. So the most important, you know, contribution of this model was, this model, after making this model, they tested it empirically. That means at all the stages they collected data, then they prepared causal models. Now, what are causal models? Models are when we have lot of, you know, variables, are all those things that vary. Vary means at different point of time, for different people, for different organization, the values will be different. Okay, and that is the reason why we call variable. Suppose I say job satisfaction, it's a variable, because your satisfaction at work and my satisfaction at work will vary. Our satisfaction will be vary depending on, you know, different facilities at the workplace, right? So variable, when there are a lot of variables in an organization together, one variable influences other, the other one influences others. And when we study the interrelationships of these variables, interrelationships of these variables leads us to causal model. Okay, it helps us to causal model. So this causal refers to the word, causal refers to cause and effect, right? Effect. Unhappy people, suppose employees are the production is very low. Let us look at the consequence. Suppose the production is very low, and you as a manager are trying to identify the reasons why production is low. Because the people were absent previous month more. Now, why people were absent? Maybe the reason because people were more, you know, the well-being of people was low. Now, why the well-being of people was low? Because probably the leader created a lot of stress for them, or the working conditions of the organizations very bad, which led to a lot of stress or physical health problems, because of which their well-being was low. And since well-being was low, therefore production was low, right? So what is this? This kind of explanation is cause and effect relationship, right? So cause and effect relationship is built, and by this we try to predict things. This cause and effect relationship is actually explains prediction, how we predict something is going to happen. Or if I as a manager take a decision today, for example, let us take this COVID-19. Okay, when in March, April initially the lockdown was declared, if you recall, the companies, the migrant laborers or migrant workers in different parts of the country actually, were under the lockdown. They did not work, but then their company provided them some sort of, financial backup so that they could continue their life. But later on, gradually what happened after say 1 month or 2 months of lockdown, the organizations in many cases, they withdrew the financial support that they were providing to their employees, and this withdrawal of financial support made the people go through a stressful situation of how to manage their family, how to, and there was a lot of chaos, and this chaos actually led to the whole, and there was some communications, a lot of politics, and because of all these factors led to the migration problem. If you recall, 2 months back was everywhere seen in television and news everywhere. So what was happening here? It's a cause and effect model. So since you made a decision, and that decision as a manager to stop financial support to these people led to such a situation. But I give you another example. Suppose as a manager or the CEO of the organization, you would have decided, okay, since our production is low now, or we are not producing right now because of lockdown, we will give some substantial financial support to the people, which will be certainly enough for, their day-to-day necessities which are important to run a basic life. And the moment we are back in the economy, it's functioning, everything will be smooth again. If as a CEO, as a leader, you could give that message to the, your employees, then probably there would not have been so much of chaos. You just try to think about it. This is just an example I am throwing on your floor. And where do this problem happens in our decision is when we are actually not able to make the right prediction. That means we are not able to analyze right cause and effect relationship. Whenever we are unable to do this properly, we land into poor decisions. Lack of this, remember, leads us to poor decision making, and poor decision making by a leader, by a manager is always, disastrous for any organization, which have very bad consequences, which is a vicious cycle. Again, I'll explain it in detail. So I hope now you are clear that Burke and Litwin came with this model of change because it helped in predicting the impact of organization change, number one. Second, they empirically tested it. Empirically testing of theory is very, very important because theory is something which you observe, you think, and you build a reason, right? If you remember the Kolb's model we discussed in our training and development class. So it's inductive in approach. You thought about it, but once you have thought and you have built some models, which is, conceptual in nature, you need to take quantitative measurements from the real-time situations and test them. When you take this data from real situations and test them in the particular model, that refers to empirically testing. And once empirically testing is done, it validates the causal model. This is external environment. Now here, all these four, remember, these four top boxes are something which indicate transformational change. And these changes here talks about transactional change. Now, what's the difference between transformational change and transactional change? Transformational change is change in higher degree. Remember, we in the beginning class we discussed the magnitude of change. So when we look at magnitude of change, let me put it here, magnitude of change, then an understanding of these four, that is external environment, mission, strategy, leadership, organization, culture. If anything is changing in these four boxes, remember the change is going to be transformational in nature. Write it down somewhere so that in any case study or any situation given to you, you can identify. And whenever it's a transformational change, it involves a lot of stakeholders, lot of people, and longer time to bring about change. And the influence of change is also very crucial, because these changes in these four boxes influence all the outcomes in the organization, right? And if you look at the outcomes, this lowest, part of the model explains the outcome of an any model. So the output or outcome is the individual and organization performance. It could be in form of, customer satisfaction. It could be in form of productivity. It could be in form of, employee citizenship, behavior of an employee, anything. These are the outcomes. Remember yesterday in one slide, I showed you what are the various outcomes. Let me see if it's still there. Yeah. Here, if you see the model, the outcomes. So at individual level, at group level, and at organization level, these are the various kind of outcomes that we can observe. And this outcome in Burke and Letwin's model is at the lowest box. And these topmost box are those boxes which are responsible for transformational change. Okay, now, and one more thing, these are the boxes which are variables. Again, remember, these are constructs, but you can collect data on these constructs. And when you are able to connect data on these constructs, we call them variables as well. Okay? So by collecting data on these issues, you can try to predict the influence on all these factors. All these factors means structure, manpower, management practices, systems. So let us try to understand this in more detail. And before that, one more thing you need to remember is these causal links, these lines. These lines, all these lines are actually causal links. They tell you what is affecting what. All causal links, or they are also referred by the word what you call direction of influence. Direction of influence, right? So in this model, remember the arrows are very, very important, which tell you where taken decision influences. Now let us try to understand this more deeply. Now let's start with the first one, the external environment. The whole change process is triggered by stimuli which is in external environment. It can be a situation like COVID-19. It can be, crash in share market. It can be technological change. It can be anything like that is taking place in external market, which we normally, if you remember a word called pestle, remember? Pestle is your political, economic, social, technological, environment, and legal changes that are taking place anywhere externally in the organization. So outside the organization, these pestles are actually your stimulus. Now, these are actually your stimulus, which influence what? You see now the arrow, which influence the leadership style, isn't it? So if there is change anything inside, your leader may change his or her leadership style, the decisions. What is the leadership? Leadership is nothing but the ability to influence your followers, isn't it? Lead them, give them a direction, give them a vision. The role of leadership is to provide vision to the people, give them direction, what to do. That is purely basic, depends on decision making. So again, you know, to take good decision, you should be able to, you know, make a right assessment of the consequences of decision being taken up by the person. So if you look at so many things happening around you, so many mergers, acquisitions, some are successful, some are not successful, some organizations are going for diversification. During COVID-19 also, you see different kind of organizations have, you know, come up with different type of working styles, different type of changes they have introduced in their organization. All these are based on actually decision making of the top leadership in your organization. Maybe CEO, it may be the board members, the senior members in the organization management, and their decision influences all other boxes you see around you, isn't it? You see a, you know, mutual relationship between these. So now let us look at organization, your mission and strategy, right? This box, if you see mission and strategy, leadership, the vision of leader, remember, whatever the vision of leader is, it influences mission and strategy. And mission and strategy are what? Mission and strategy are nothing but they define the purpose of the organization, isn't it? Mission and strategy give a purpose for existence of the organization, and this purpose actually helps you to make decisions and say. So therefore, you know, whenever somebody asks you, whenever you see around you people, they'll select certain organizations. If they're given discretion in which organization they will like to work, you know, one of the most probable answer among Indians is to work for Tata. The reason is because the practices, customs, traditions, norms that Tata has been, you know, able to follow in past so many years has actually built in more of trust and satisfaction among the employees, and this message actually goes around. Same is with, you know, IT organizations. You see which organization, which brand people want to go for. So therefore, what I want to say, these four things actually are very much interrelated. Number one. Second thing is they influence each other highly, and any change in them, remember this, any change in external environment, mission and strategy of the organization, leadership or organization culture is a transformational change, because the organization has to change almost all of its boxes here, rest of the boxes like structure, practices, system, policies keeps on changing. One example I'll give you. For example, the organization X tries to, you know, decides to go for merger with a say a Japanese company. An organization X, Indian organization, tries to or decides to merge with a Japanese company, organization Y. So can you think, this is a strategic decision the organization is taking towards its growth. Now if you are merging with a Japanese company, all these structures, your organization culture will change, your leadership will change. Why your leadership will change? Because your board members will change. Once the board members change, all the policies, practices, norms, way of doing work, technology, everything undergoes the change process. So now I think you are able to see if there is a change in strategy of organization, how it can influence all the lower boxes. Okay? Again, let me talk about the change in leadership. There are plenty of examples. You see, whenever a top leader or a CEO changes of an organization, the immediate effect is change in work practices, and this change in work practices gives a lot of signals to people. So many times when the senior leadership changes, the performers in an organization leave the organization, or the organization brings about change in its mission and strategy, because vision influences purpose, right? Same with organization culture. If you are changing the culture of the organization to retain the new culture, you will have to change your policies and procedures. You will have to change your practices. You have to, and this will further influence all the downward boxes, right? So I hope now you are clear why these changes in 4 top boxes is a transformational change. Now let us look at the lower boxes, how they influence. You see, we have structure. Now, what is structure in an organization? Structure is the hierarchical structure, isn't it? It gives the authority relationship in an organization, right? So structure explains authority relationship in an organization, and this influence your management practices. Let's take an example here. Suppose your organization is a hierarchical structure, has a strong hierarchical structure where the vertical hierarchy is very clearly defined, which explains the unity of command, which explains your authority relationship. Now, what sort of practices will be there? The practices will be more of, maybe autocratic in nature, decision making. How will be the decision making? You have seen in principles and practices management of your paper. How will it influence decision making? Decision making, remember, is more centralized in these kind of organizations where there is a strict vertical hierarchy. The decision making is centralized, right? And if it's a flat structure, the decision making will be decentralized. Similarly, a lot of management practices of your planning, organizing, how you employ people, even like if you see at the process of recruitment, organizations which have a very high vertical structure, there the recruitment is actually completely centralized, I can say, right? There the managers or the unit heads do not have much discretion about taking decision about appointing people. Whereas if you look at all those organizations which have structure is more vertical in nature, there is more team sort of work structure. In these organizations, the team leaders at times